Of all the videos I've ever done, I think this topic is going to be the hardest for me to discuss. And given the topic, I don't mean that in any sort of funny way. I mean that for me, this is deeply challenging to talk about, and there is shame and embarrassment attached to it, and it is just a struggle. But I picked it for my number one topic because it was the thing that got so bad that it pushed me toward getting a diagnosis and needing more information. It was a big deal. It came to a big head for me, and I just needed more. And so I wanted to talk about that. Now, I can't talk from a professional standpoint, and I can't talk from like years of training. I can talk from an experiential standpoint and share what I felt, what I experienced, and what helped, what didn't help, what I've noticed, those sorts of things. So this is purely my experience. However, I thought that some of that information might help people, strangers on the internet, as well as people that know me. Now, I'm going to try to do this in a relatively short amount of time so that people have the time to watch it. So there's no way I'm going to cover everything or everything I experienced. But I want to start by saying that when it comes to autism, autism is considered primarily a communication disorder. And this topic is not experienced by every person on the spectrum, nor is it only experienced by people on the spectrum. And that's important to note. But for me, it was very much tied into my experience and how I got here today. And when it kind of blew up for me, I thought it was a one-time experience. Now, looking back and going forward as I experience day-to-day life, I realized that it is not as simple as that, nor was it a one-time thing. So the topic is selective mutism. And selective mutism is something that is experienced by people who, physically speaking, have the ability to say words, form sentences, participate in dialogue, and may in fact do that to a large degree in a variety of settings. They may, for instance, be a bubbly, happy, outgoing person when they're at home. They may, in fact, be able to be around certain groups of people and talk nonstop. But when they get into certain situations or around certain groups of people, they are unable to speak. And this has caused many problems over the years in the outside looking in, because it appears that the person is willfully not talking, right? Because you know that they have the ability to, why aren't they? And children have been harassed as being defiant, and it has caused problems in schools. And there are tons of testimonies out on the internet for people to read about people who have struggled with this topic and with this issue. And science and everything else has tried to explain it and deal with it. I viewed it as something I actually knew existed, but I viewed it as somebody who just would suddenly just stop talking, like in all arenas. Like you'd see it in a movie, for instance, where a child would suddenly not talk because there was trauma, and then they would not speak at all. And so I think somewhere in my mind, that's kind of what I thought of it as. I knew Maya Angelou had an experience similar where she went for years without talking. So I viewed it as that. I did not realize or understand that it was something that could take place in only specific settings or only around specific people, and it could be that sort of dynamic. And I went through this experience where I realized I was having trouble talking in certain settings. And I noticed it when I was younger, but it was defined as anxiety. Like I had social anxiety. So yeah, you go out to a party and you don't want to talk at a party because you're embarrassed, because you have social anxiety. So it's easier to just stay at home. And that's how it was defined for me. So I just viewed myself as nervous. I would struggle really hard and try to face it and face my fears and all this stuff. But I got to a point in life where I had actually um, gained a ton of confidence and been through a whole lot of changes in my life, and I was not scared anymore of a lot of things, and I wasn't having those sorts of things. But I knew that a lot of my dialogue was having to be rehearsed and planned and thought about, and so that plays all into autism, which I can talk about more down the line, where I was having to cognitively plan out things that I'm saying and scripts and rehearsing. And I still was like, why am I having all of this anxiety? Why am I nervous and scared? Why are my wheels constantly going? Because they were constantly going, and constantly like all this stuff going on in my mind. And then I would get where I wanted to speak and nothing would come out, or a sentence would come out, or like I would just be struggling so bad to form words. And I would wait and I would wait. Now, there's a part of autism where I was, and I still am, like, I don't know when to talk in a conversation. So sometimes I just wait. I'll just wait and I'll just stand and wait for forever until somebody like says, go ahead, you can talk. Like, I will just stand and wait because I don't know when to talk. And so I would just like be standing around, like fighting to talk, fighting to form, and never get it out and never say anything. And I think during that time, my head was so noisy that I did not realize how quiet I actually was. Because to me, my world was very, very loud and going on all the time. And I was not getting things out of my mouth. Um, and it's funny because, of course, in situations, put me in front of a camera, put me in front of certain people, I can just talk endlessly. So it would be extremely frustrating to then go home and be able to just like blah, 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 and realize, why can't I do this? It's so easy. And I would talk myself through it. And I started to realize this is something more than just anxiety. And I fought, fought myself, and was so down on myself because I couldn't get things out, or I'd get one sentence out, or I'd get two sentences, and like, why can't I do this? And I would be shaking and frustrated, and there was one situation I was in where I was like hiding in the bathroom crying because I'm like, I can't say the things. A couple times I blurted things out just because it finally would come out. I would finally get to what I could say, and it would just come out in whatever situation I was in, and usually caused a problem because of that. But I would finally be able to say it, and it was like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, it just was bad. I would show up places and I didn't know what to do. And it would be even worse because then there would be some people I could talk to and some people I couldn't talk to. And I thought I was going to lose it. It was miserable, and I could go on forever about that experience. For me, the best way I can come to define it at this point is as if there would be words and they would get all tangled up in a ball, like a ball of tangled up wires. And I couldn't untangle them to get them out of my mouth. And they would all be there, and I would know what I'd say, and I could rehearse it for days ahead of time. And then I'd get in the situation and it was too jumbled up and I couldn't get it out. And I was miserable in the experience, but I was also like, it was maddening. And the worst experience that I had with it, where it got to be the worst, is I was going through this weekly situation, and it was just this cycle, and I would hit a day of the week where it didn't matter how I was on Saturday, when I could be the happiest person in the world on Saturday, and I would wake up on Sunday and I would be out of my gourd depressed. Like, I didn't want to do anything. I was miserable. And it would cycle through this, and to the point where it started bleeding into Saturday, because now I knew Sunday was going to come and it was going to be bad. And so I got to the point where, like, I have to do something, and I would fight, and I would fight to say something, to express something, to get it. And I finally, like, one day just sat down and just wrote it all in a letter, packed it up, and gave it to the person. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think it ended well. But what it did was, because I untangled all those words in some form, I stopped having that experience because the words got out. And I think that that's the most frustrating thing for me. Like, I finally got the words out, and so I stopped having this cycle happen. And when I discovered selective mutism out of that, because that's what it was, I'm like, I cannot talk. I can't talk. I can't say, I can think about the words. I can feel the words. I cannot say them. Like, hi, hello was beyond me at times. How are you today? Beyond me at times. Like, simple, everyday dialogue. But I could have it with the person at the gas station just fine. And I felt like there is something significantly stupid or wrong with me. And I started feeling like there was something beyond. Anyway, when I discovered selective mutism, I was relieved on one hand. On the other hand, I felt very ashamed because, number one, so often it was considered to be a childhood thing. But two, to know that you can talk and that you can be goofy and bubbly and fun, loving, and laughing in one situation, and then walk in through a door and it's like, and it all goes away, and it's as if it's just way out of your reach. And you want people to know that side of you. You want them to see this person, and it's out of your reach. You can't touch it. It is exhausting and frustrating, but the worse I would fight it, the worse it would get, and the more of a battle. And I would go home sobbing, like I just couldn't figure out, why can't I just be normal me? Like, why can't I do this? That is the thing that actually got me to where I started digging through communication and problems and looking beyond. Like, anxiety is just not I cannot just say this is just social anxiety anymore, when I am doing every mental gymnastic and I can't beat it. Like, I cannot make myself, I just didn't think that that was a good enough explanation anymore. So that was and is still, I still experience that sometimes. So I wanted to tell you about a few things that kind of help in that situation. The problem is that this very quickly turns into a 20-25 minute video. So I am going to tell you a few things that help me, but I don't feel like I've even scratched the surface, and I'm already 13 minutes in here. But how I feel, and then things that I've noticed that have helped me throughout time. And I'm still learning about this because I still experience it. And when I experience it, I try to step back and experience it more objectively, rather than just the fight where I'm driving myself berserk, so that I can see, how do I get out and how do I get in, and view it that way, so that maybe I can stop having that experience so much. And yes, there's outside help. I'm not trying to pretend like there's not, but anyway, one of the things that I've noticed is that when people continue to press for an answer, if they're trying to get information and I'm trying to form some sort of answer, every time you push more for an answer, it is like starting the process all over again. So one of the things that I can encourage you to do is, if you're dealing with somebody who's dealing with this, is to be patient, to give them time, room, space to answer. Okay? Communication is a lot more than just being able to speak. And children, adults, we have both expressive and receptive when it comes to verbal language. We understand and we speak, and those are not necessarily the same thing. So sometimes we understand more than we can say, and it's not always just as simple as forming the words. It's very complex. So give people the time to process and speak. I'll be honest, this is beyond even this. We don't do this well as people. We want to just um, speak, and we're not always good about listening. So give people time. Give me time, please, to answer. Uh, Also, I really struggle to initiate conversation, to begin conversation. So, a lot of times, even when I'm struggling with the mutism, I can't say anything until I'm asked. And I know that sounds completely goofy, but if you walk up to me and you talk to me or you ask me a question, sometimes that's like a key in a lock. And it allows me to start talking, and it allows me to springboard. I struggle with generating new conversation. So sometimes we'll have an awkward, like, back and forth, and then all of a sudden I don't know what else to add to it. I struggle with that. So giving me time, but also being not being offended that I didn't walk up to you. I'm not saying things sometimes. When you ask me a question, it unlocks that door sometimes to allow me to speak. Um, Another thing is to understand that the more pressure that is on me to talk or perform, the harder it becomes. So here's the thing. I'm actually really good with, like, I can get up on stage and speak, and I can do this all day long, but I'm actually, it's a challenge for me to um, do it on the spot. And it's a challenge for me to do it where I feel like I'm gonna get judged a lot, um, like one on one. So I need people that are going to give me a lot of grace. And if you can't give me grace, it's a problem. So it, I don't know how to word this part, because this is the part I'm still struggling with. Um, the more I am struggling with the outcome of the conversation, the harder conversation gets for me. So when I'm around people who I know that I can say any damn thing in the world and they're not going to kick me out, then that allows me to open up more. But the more I'm afraid that that door is going to close on me, the less I'm able to talk every time. So the more comfortable I get around you, the more secure I get, the more I experience it, the easier it gets for me to talk, which again means patience and time. It doesn't happen overnight. And I can tell you that I've been married for 23 years. There are moments that I still struggle to initiate that conversation or to share my heart with my husband, my best friend of about the same amount of time. Very much sometimes I can't say what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. It's just simply a struggle. And then I would like people to understand that it is maddening to know that I can form every word in the English language, some in foreign languages, that I can be an absolute goofball and I can have a lot of fun. I'm actually a very easygoing person in a lot of ways, and I actually love to just be lighthearted. And then to sit in a vehicle with somebody, like in my own vehicle, you should see me. And then I get in a vehicle with somebody and I sit there like a statue. Why? I don't know. It's not even about necessarily that I'm going to be judged or criticized. It's not exactly about social anxiety. So sometimes just understanding that it is maddening for me. And I need people too that just allow me to be broken and allow me to have that, okay, Crystal, you can't talk right now. That's fine. That's not a big deal. Um, there are other forms of communication. There are other forms of relationship. There are other forms of connection that we can have in this moment. I will tell you, I don't share it very often because it is so very close to my heart. But one of the sweetest moments of my adult life was simply I was so overwhelmed and did not know what to say and did not have any words to form and was just sitting somewhere and had somebody come and just sit down beside me, and they didn't say a word and I didn't say a word, and it was the sweetest moment. And then I had to talk because I felt like, oh, this, I have to say something, right? But sometimes that's all I need, is just somebody to just be there with me and just be willing for it to be silent and it to be okay, because words are hard for me sometimes. Talking is hard for me sometimes. And I don't need that added pressure of we have to talk to be together. um, because I pick up a whole lot else than just words. For me, when it comes to a relationship, it's way beyond just what we're saying today. And um, words are sometimes the hardest part of a relationship for me. So I again, I knew this would end up being long, but I wanted to share this. This is still something I'm still struggling with and experiencing with. I thought it was like a one-time thing, and then as I started looking back, I realized it had been there all my life probably, but I can point to so many times where I either could not talk at all or would only be able to talk in like the tiniest little sentences or struggle to get something out. And I was so embarrassed and ashamed of it being a thing that because I just thought I was anxious, and like there's lots of people with anxiety, and I would think that, oh, this is just, I just can't get over it, right? It's more than that. And it is more than just willfully choosing not to talk. I can tell you it was like banging against the walls in my head at times to try to talk and still couldn't get words out. And speaking whole plays in my head, like I just, and then it wouldn't come out and I couldn't say the words, and it's exhausting. And then I look like a crazy person when it finally all comes barreling out, or when it comes out in some other fashion or whatever. Anyway, I would love to hear anybody else's experiences with this. I would love to hear any sort of feedback. Again, this is just the beginning of information dump, which is a problem for autistics from what I understand. Like seriously, I have so much to tell. And I don't know how to condense them into short moments, but this was a big deal. It still is. And people who know me, who think that I'm just a chatterbox, mm, I am sometimes, aren't I? I wish you would tell all these other people. And then what I think, oh, if you stay to the end, you get the part. That was the thing. People that know me that think I'm a chatterbox, I would love to say, will you just tell those other people that I can't talk to? But the thing is that sometimes I'm afraid that people are thinking that I'm not talking to them because I don't like them. And the problem is that sometimes the people I like the most, or that I'm the most drawn to, I have the hardest time talking to, at least at first. And I have the hardest time keeping up with, because this hits, because it matters so much that it makes the wires jumble up in my head and I can't get past it. So sometimes, as I said, the more pressure there is, exactly that, the more pressure there is for me, the more it matters for me, the harder it is. So It is absolutely not about whether or not I like you or want to talk to you or care about you. It is 100%. I, I mean, it's awful sometimes. And the way the world works is the easiest thing to do is to just avoid it and therefore not engage it. And the problem is that from the outside, I can just slip through the cracks and it's all too easy for me to just slip away. So I have to fight it, but fighting it is the harder of the two roads. So, anyway, if you've made it this far, thanks for listening. And I hope I've helped somebody, maybe, possibly. Have a wonderful day, night, week, month, wherever you're experiencing this and hearing this. I hope it's good. And you know what? Life is about more than words. There's so much toward it. And be kind to everybody because, man, the battles are real. Bye. It didn't stop. Bye for real.